if you were talking about commercial products like an action figure or posters or
Right.
the Ian McLean lunchbox series.
I definitely want one of those.
Ian and
Well,
Scooby-Doo on the same lunchbox.
what?
Right?
Ian, David, and Quinn started out to make a $50 million movie based on Ian's book, TJ's War. Mark, Sia, and Sincera soon jumped on board, and then Mr. Z joined the team, a mysterious executive producer who said, "Stop, this is no movie. This is a 2-season, 20-episode TV show. So follow us, join us as we create TJ's War, the $50 million TV series."
Well,
Gordon, do you have 50 million on you?
Yeah, somewhere.
Okay, great.
Not in these pants. But let me get into the car and dig under the seat. But we actually should sort of inject a little dose of realism, and it's fun talking about 5 billion, half a billion, even 50 million. Realistically speaking, television programs, $1 million to $2 million per episode, that's a high number for streamers and networks to pay for any kind of material, really, unless it's got a huge star attached. I mean, there are stars of television shows who are making close to $1 million per episode just themselves, but that is an exception rather than the rule. For a show like this, I think you do need to be a little realistic about what to expect, and maybe the 50 million number for 20 episodes is a better number to work from. Thinking about it, and look, you're gonna front load the expenses on the things that you have to build just to make the show that are gonna continue episode to episode. And if you're doing lots of location shooting, which it sounds like this project would have, that's going to be a significant cost factor. So you're going to have to keep costs down in other areas. Maybe it's a small production team, small cast, those kinds of things that will allow an agile and efficient production process to deliver those episodes for less than the $2 million maybe that Netflix or Amazon or someone is going to want to pay for that episode.
I think the issue we have with that is that we've produced the treatment, but then how that's produced, I think is that's not our expertise, and the production company that we start to work with, whoever that may be, that will be their expertise, and really the script and the budget. My career is all about project and program management, and at the beginning of a program, people will say, "How much does it cost?" And I say, "Well, I can give you an estimate, but it can be between several 100% above or below that figure." And really, it's only when we're in about 30% into the program that we can give you an accurate idea of how much the whole thing's going to cost.
Yeah.
So there is this sort of very fuzzy front end to any of these large programs and projects. And
well, I mean, the good news is you're not reinventing the wheel here. There have been television shows and films made, in similar genre. I mean, to a certain extent, this is the Avengers or Mission Impossible or something as a television program. So, there are ways to sort of accurately predict, and there are folks in this industry. The line producers, an experienced line producer, will be able to, I think, get you closer than a 30% margin, probably within 10 or 20% margin, assuming everything goes smoothly. Then you have to add a contingency for the not running smoothly, which is pretty common. But that's really your next step, I would say, is engaging with a line producer, or maybe it's a unit production manager, someone who has the experience creating these budgets and doing the scheduling to get a sense of how many days are you going to need in this particular city in Croatia or whatever.
I wonder how much in this day and age of CGI and green screens and whatnot, how much we actually will need to do. I mean, this is a discussion for another episode, I think. But will we need to actually film in Norway? The book opens in Norway. I mean, do we have to go to Norway, or can we just put Norway on a green screen?
You may be able to get some stock footage for establishing shots and things like that, so you don't have to go to Norway for that. And then you can find lots of locations that will look good enough, close enough to being someplace in Norway. And maybe expensive to shoot in Norway, but much less so in Latvia. So you go to Latvia to shoot. And lots of cities substitute for other cities. You know, I know that people use Toronto for many different European cities just to avoid all that overseas travel. So there are ways, and that again is where an effective line producer and unit production manager and maybe location manager supervisor can really help you tighten up the budget. What I would say is probably go for the top line budget with the best locations and the best everything, and then do a secondary budget that aims for the lower cost. But let's remember that the CGI and the AI generated stuff, that all has cost too.
Right.
And you can end up, you know, spinning your wheels trying to get the shot to look just right, and it ends up costing almost as much as it would have been to be there.
Yeah. What are there legal strategies for assembling investor packages that make it appealing for the investor and less intimidating for first timers like us?
Well, I mean, look, there are some sort of customary approaches to assembling these things. You know, here in the U.S., the investor package we have to comply with U.S. securities law. I don't know enough about UK security law to know what the rules are, but were we doing it in the U.S., you know, the requirement is that you either register the offering, which is essentially an initial public offering, an IPO. It's a tremendously costly and time-consuming process, or you operate under certain exemptions. Now, in the $50 million range, the only one of those exemptions is even going to be available. You're going to very wealthy people with experience as investors who don't need so much protection from the regulatory structures and are able to make their own judgments. And so what you're preparing is a prospectus, what we also called an offering circular, or it's a disclosure document. Here's all the risks of what you're doing. And that tends to be a fairly lengthy document. You may have seen these prospectuses before. And
many times.
Yeah,
that was my area of law, securities
right.
law. Okay.
Oh, okay. So so, you know, that compliance. And then typically, if you're offering the securities to people in other countries, you also have to comply with the laws of those countries. That's where it can get really unwieldy. So ideally, you're looking for one or two people who can put up the full 50 or however many millions of dollars you need to come in on that and sit back and I'll say wait, but some might say pray for the return on investment.
Well, there's a lot of prayer on this end going on. How do big projects like this typically get funded?
Yeah, I mean, typically nowadays, there was a time, probably the late 80s into the 90s, when investment groups, you know, these limited partnerships, Silver Screen Partners was one of them. There were a lot of these limited partnerships that would essentially create a fund of resources to use to invest in films. That's less the case these days. And most of the big budget financing is coming from the studio's own coffers.
Yeah.
They essentially are acting as the bank, lending against the project and then taking overhead charges and interest charges and overhead on the interest charges and interest on the overhead charges. And that's when you get into the funny money discussion of how profits are calculated in the film industry. In the television industry, it's almost always that debt financed thing that I was talking about, where the studio or the network is promising to pay the license fee upon delivery, and then either the studio that's making it funds that, again with the same model, or the producers go to the bank and engage in a debt transaction in order to cover it. And those are short-term transactions, so the interest doesn't tend to be tremendous. Unless you're deficit financing, of course.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it is actually. Are there any special legal considerations when adapting real people's lives, especially if they're deceased, as in the story about the author's father?
I'm going to speak mainly from my understanding of U.S.-based law. This is,
Sure.
you know, privacy and defamation and things like that.
I think that's often good, because I think there's a more than 50, a very good chance that we will be doing this through the US rather than through the UK.
Yeah.
At the moment, I think the last person at the UK is going to switch the lights off in the next couple of weeks. So,
okay.
The money, I think, is in the US, not in the UK.
Yeah. So, with living people, we often talk about obtaining the life rights, and there's no such thing as life rights. What we're really talking about is a bundle of promises. Not to sue us if we embellish and elaborate on things, that creative license that we probably want in order to be able to turn characters into composites and condense time and things like that. The promise not to sue, the promise to cooperate, giving access to the person and their files and records and photographs and things like that, and also to help you get other people to cooperate and participate. So that's sort of the bundle that is life rights. But with deceased people, they can't really cooperate directly. They don't, so it's really what you need is maybe access. So you're dealing with the family and the estate. And at least in the US, a deceased person doesn't have rights relating to privacy and defamation. So we worry much less about the absolute accuracy of the material and the creative license that we talk about. So it becomes less of a concern when the people portrayed are no longer living. Now, if some of them are still alive, then that's an analysis that the business affairs lawyers are going to make probably just before production. Do we go in and need to secure anybody's rights? And a lot of time that's just after looking at the script, making a judgment call about, is there something that's going to hurt somebody's reputation? Are we disclosing something that they wouldn't have wanted known? If you have a character who it turns out was gay, but they kept it under wraps all these years, that's the kind of thing they may not want made public, right, even on their, as they approach the end of their lives. So, you sort of look for what are the hot button issues and try to clear those things.
I know I joked earlier about an Ian McLean action figure, but if the project does expand into not necessarily merchandising, but TV spinoffs or streaming adaptations, what kind of IP or licensing groundwork should be laid in advance for that?
Well, the creator of the initial project definitely wants to be included in the revenue stream, if not the actual production and development of those future projects. And that's something that needs to be built into the original option contract or purchase contract. And that's where spin-offs and follow-on projects like you've described, that I probably wouldn't be all that worried about name and image and likeness issues. If you were talking about commercial products like an action figure or posters or
right,
the Ian McLean Lunchbox series.
I definitely want one of those.
Ian and Scooby-Doo on the same Lunchbox. Right?
All right. Well, let me.
Then that's a commercial use that we would need to get rights for. Go ahead. Okay. Sorry.
Well, no. Well, I'm thinking of, like, to me, there's an interesting story in the story, and the book opens with Ian finding his father, and then later in his young adulthood finding out about his father. And I don't want to reveal all the whole story. It's not for the sake of spoilers, but for the sake of time. And but Ian goes 40 years putting together the story. To me, that's also a story. Like, I feel like if TJ's War was successful, I want to then see the series about Ian going around and finding his father's old friends, or where his father went during the war. And, that's in itself an interesting story. I don't know.
It's an interesting story.
Yeah. I want a piece of that too, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, I mean, and that may really be the more compelling hero's journey story of the two. Certainly, I mean, they're both hero's journey stories, but and in fact, it may be a storytelling device that you end up sort of creating a hybrid of both, where you use Ian's story as bookends for each episode of how the thing comes together, and then
I took a shot at writing the screenplay for this. I'm not a big enough name for Ian and some other people that are involved in this project, but I tried, and that was my idea. Was that actually to weave in Ian's story with TJ's story, and that how things that happen in TJ's life happens, is reflected in what happens in Ian's own life. Yeah. I thought it was great, but apparently my name's
lots of potential here, and the real trick is extracting the gold nuggets from the ore.
Well, that's it. You're right.
Ian? you've been extremely kind, Gordon, and given us a lot of really, really. I mean, there's some real nuggets in what you just said all the time. I want to know how you got to where you are. You know, it's kind of the question that I've asked people my whole life. But you're you're a really well known lawyer in the middle of Hollywood, pretty much, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is I mean, we see Hollywood in the Oscars, and there's all kinds of stories about Hollywood, and it's uh, to me, it's. I mean, that's at least one book, if not a volume of books, to be able to be in that position, right?
Yeah.
How did you get to that position? And I just want to know much more about you.
Okay.
In the 5 seconds that we've got left.
Well, I was born in Oxford, England, actually, but
Yeah.
I discovered an affinity or a passion for entertainment, the entertainment industry and the business in the form of the theater at a very young age, 5 years old, kindergarten. The high school kids in our K through 12 school were doing their production of the musical Oliver. They brought us in to see it. I witnessed this, and it hooked me for life, basically, on being a part of this thing. Over the years, got involved in theater as a technician, a sound and lighting technician, and got into, working in the production side of things. And by college, I sort of moved from theater into the film and television side of things, again, studying production and so on. But that's where I discovered some aptitude for the legal, the organizational, the management and operational side of things. And that's when I was encouraged to apply to law school. I did sort of grudgingly, but then didn't get the kind of jobs right out of school. There was a union strike.
Encouraging you? Was this your parents were encouraging?
It was my
you?
professor, Deanna Robinson, at the University of Oregon, who said, you should think about going to law school. And I laughed. I thought that was the funniest thing I'd ever heard. Took a couple of days to sink in, and then I applied and took the tests. And didn't get into film school, but I did get into law school. And so I decided after being on a strike-related hiatus in 1988 that I was going to go to law school, and came out with a glut of lawyers into a market of a constricting legal industry, and the Hollywood industry was merging and consolidating. So there were a lot of folks out of work. Didn't really have much choice but to go out on my own fairly early in my legal career. And I would say, the rest is sort of history. I've gotten pretty good at tooting my own horn, and that's some of the fame that you refer to. But also, staying with it and being focused, and really not finding a passion for much else than these people and these creativities, these creative outputs. It's just what I find so rewarding, is helping people craft and distribute their messages and stay safe while they do it, so they can achieve some impact and influence and income. So that's my goal.
Good for you. Seriously. I left the practice of law because I could not find my passion in it. And, well, it's not my story right now, but, I'm representing people in banks that I didn't want to represent. And so,
the thing about my practice, Mark, is really any rational observer who's familiar with how lawyers operate would look at what I do and say, you're not a lawyer.
I think most people
has all these other irons in the fire, and that's really what's kept me interested and excited.
I think probably most of the people I graduated law school with aren't lawyers in the. I don't know about most, but half of the ones I kept in touch with, none of them became lawyer. None of them became Matlock or Perry Mason, or whatever. It's a different ballgame these days.
Yeah.
Let me get, before we run out of time, there are two more questions I wanted to ask. You are the podcast lawyer. Mm-hmm. Are there any legal risks we should watch for as we document this development process publicly on this show? I probably should have asked you this a year and a half ago, but here we are.
Well, in large part, the legal risks of creating any kind of media content are the same. We worry about privacy invasion. We worry about defamation, libel in the case of a podcast or film. We worry about the consent for the recording. So let me just say it here. You hereby have my consent to record and publish this episode without my right of approval or intervention. I'm not getting paid for it, and you can use it and repurpose it as you see fit. But I think you want to get your guests' consent, and just, I guess, fact checking is sort of an important thing, especially when people are talking about real other people. You want to make sure that if somebody says something disparaging or even just embarrassing about another person, that they better be able to back it up. There better be multiple sources for it. So a little fact checking, being a journalist, or at least having that journalist hat to put on before you publish an episode, is important. And just documenting the deals as you go forward. If there's monetization in question, contracts are important, those kinds of things.
Can the podcast itself be considered IP?
Yeah.
If so, how can we leverage and protect it? Like when the movie is huge, people are going to come back and want to listen to this. And so maybe some people listen to it now, but I'm saying, like, what if it's worth money later down the road?
Well,
is there leverage to protect it as part of the overall brand surrounding TJ's War and the movie project?
Well, the brand, the title TJ's War, may be something that is a standalone intellectual property, especially if it's coming out in multiple episodes or volumes or something like that. You might be looking at some trademark protection for that name and title. The podcast episodes themselves are copyright works, protected from the moment you press the record button.
Put them out there, right?
The real question is, how do you monetize or attach a value to that? And as you said, that value may come later on, and that sort of long tail of value. It may be that becomes bonus material that gets distributed to VIP clients or VIP subscribers or something like that, or maybe it just becomes something else that appears on Netflix alongside this. Oh, you like that show? Here, watch this. It's about the making of. Those kinds of things. So you may have another title to sell, essentially, or maybe you could do some kind of subscription model where you actually charge people for access to hear, how the sausage was made.
All right. Well, Gordon, what do you have going on these days? How can people find you? Where can they look you up?
Well, I'm very fortunate to have a distinctive name. So Gordon Firemark, just like it sounds, GordonFiremark.com is the website where my online courses for creators and various intellectual property kinds of things are based. And you can find me on YouTube. The handle there is GFiremark. Also, most social media, GFiremark. And I put out a couple of different podcasts. One is called Entertainment Law Update. It is a sort of high-level legal discussion, sort of case briefing, monthly roundup of news and information about the legal side of the entertainment industry. We just put out our 181st monthly episode yesterday. Oh, wow. And I've been doing it for 16 years now. And and for the podcast creators out there, I do a more easily digested show called Legit Podcast Pro, where I share tips and strategies and ideas about, how to protect yourself as a creator. It applies to the YouTubers and everybody else as well, but it's aimed at podcasters. That's on YouTube, as well as legitpodcastpro.captivate.fm, of all things. So, and that comes out weekly. So.
Okay, we'll
I'm
put
pretty
all that
hard to miss if you go looking for me.
Well, I was going to say you've got another website too, don't you have podcasttrademark.com?
Podcasttrademark.com is it's a lead magnet for folks that are in the podcasting space, in the creator space, who want to protect their brands. That's one of the ways as a lawyer that I help creators is lock down their intellectual property rights so that they don't find themselves in competition with others using the same show titles and things like that.
As I have another podcast from this one, and it's funny. I saw your post recently on LinkedIn about it was about naming and about like people who don't lock down the name rights. They might, even if no one else has that podcast name, they might run afoul if it's too generic or something like that. And I can't remember how you phrased it, but along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, descriptiveness is sort of the antithesis to trademark protection and brand values. So you want to choose things that are distinctive, that set you apart from the others, and then you want to make sure that you're the only one who's using it. Otherwise, it's no longer doing the job of distinguishing. Right. And so trademark protection is one of the ways to do that. And I'm advocating that if you've got a great show title that captures the imagination, you want to be the only one using that.
That's I had that in mind. Now, I was not a trademark lawyer, but I did have that in mind when I started Zen Sandwich, which, I still have no competitors for that one. Nobody was out there with Zen Hoagie or Zen,
Interesting.
Zen Club Sandwich or anything. No, I'm the only one. So anyway,
now I got to go have myself a Zen sandwich. That's something.
Exactly. That was the idea. Quinn, you can cut all this out. Quinn's our guy that puts all this show together. Quinn, you can cut all this out if you want.
Let's leave it in. It's all good stuff.
Well, Gordon, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm so glad we got to talk the legal side, the business side of this. We've covered a lot of angles, but Ian, I don't think we've really hit this one before.
No, this is a very special podcast, and Gordon, we'll be back in touch.
Wonderful.
I feel, I think anyone watching this would feel that you're the guy that's going to look after us.
Well, I like to think so. I feel that's sort of my mission here, and I do feel sort of paternal and protective over my clients, and really over creators in general.
I'm ex-military, and just looking at you, I want you in my trench.
Better than being in the other trench, right?
That's right. So we will definitely be back in touch. I don't think it's far away. I think from what you've said, we're okay where we are right now, but we're on the verge of the next move, and I think you should be part of that.
Well, I'd like to think so too. Thank you. It's been a real pleasure being on the show with you. If I may, I think you're at or very close to the stage where you're really looking for that rabbi with connections in the entertainment industry to get the treatment of this material into the hands of the folks who are really likely to be the exhibitors of the show. Yeah, that would be the major streamers or the major television networks around the world. And then the goal is to, pre-sell it so you don't have to go looking for investors to raise too much of the money.
Yeah, that's it. I think one fear, not to, I know we are out of time, but we talked at the beginning about the option contract, and I think one fear we have is someone optioning it and it collecting dust on their shelf.
Yeah,
and then they never make it, and we
they just paid.
We die of old age, right?
Yeah, well, that's part of the balancing act we have to do is, are we willing to let them have the time that it'll need in order to get it up and running and financed, but also you want to know that it's coming back to you if they sit on their hands or just can't make it happen. And it is a concern, it's called development hell in the industry.
Yes.
Because these sometimes projects, I wouldn't say they languish, but they just sort of lurk below the surface for years and years and years before someone gets excited about them. And the risk is, of course, they're excited today, and a year from now, the industry's moved on to the next, catastrophe movie or whatever.
Sure.
Right. Well, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much, Gordon and Ian.
And
my pleasure.
Thank you, Mark, for hosting this. And Gordon, it's been an absolute pleasure. I talked to you last week, and I knew this would be special. Thank you very, very much. And you too, Mark. I mean, the way you prepare all of this stuff is fantastic. So, from my side, thank you both very much indeed.
To find out more about the book, visit tjswar.com. And to buy it, click on the Amazon link below. So follow us, join us as we create TJ's War, the $50 million TV series.